welcome back to CAPS 2022. I'm Glenn Bischoff, MCP's content specialist, and I'm your moderator for this keynote session in which I'll be interviewing Darrin Reilly, President and CEO of Mission Critical Partners. Before we begin, I want to mention that you have the ability to ask questions throughout this session. You can do so using the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will be answered via email in the very near future. So having completed that bit of housekeeping, welcome Darrin, and thank you for carving out time to be with us today. We're really looking forward to hearing your insights.
Well, thank you, Glenn. Really excited for CAPS 2022. As you, most everyone understands, it's a third year doing this. It's been such a success the first two sessions. We want to continue it this year and most likely for years to come.
That would be great news, and it has been a great event for the last 3 years. So let's get started with the topic questions that we've developed. The first one is this: what are the most significant pain points for public sector organizations in the current environment? And there are three specific areas that we'd like to have you address: technology, operations, and governance. Let's start with technology.
Well, from a technology standpoint, Glenn, it's an incredible challenge because the customers are getting hit from multiple angles on handling how best to put together what I would say, a network mesh to have additional applications and services. So, often in the 911 world, the SENets, emergency services, IP networks, really, providing that network mesh. And then once the network mesh is there, then you can kind of layer on, again, as I mentioned, applications and services on top of it. So the biggest challenge is how to best transition to next generation technology while maintaining and upgrading legacy systems. And a lot of those systems, have lack of interoperability. So we'll be talking about a little later on, most likely, some interoperability challenges. But technology is a key one that's, they're looking at. And I think, with that, as you would expect, it's really a balancing of the needs and the requirements of a growing number of vendors that are playing in that kind of ecosystem that impact mission critical services. And, to make that even more complex, often referred to as a shiny new object syndrome. How can new technology accelerate the delivery of public services versus slow it down? Because, at the most basic element is how do you provide a higher degree of service, request for service in a response, and then recording that versus having a bunch of new technology that might slow down response. That would not, be a non-starter. So, that's a key item on technology, as well as, coping with the impact of COVID and the increased demands of the public to deliver services digitally and faster, more than ever before. And, again, with, this advent of advanced technology, if our clients lose, and most of them, obviously, vast majority of them don't, the basic responsibility is to time to respond and service versus, again, just, technology for technology's sake. So, when you look at this, our clients have to make sure that their systems are, operationally resilient in times of need, anytime, and make sure that they're very, very secure from cyber attacks. Because again, with IP comes with that kind of a standardization of bad actors knowing how to get into IP-based systems. And that's something that, again, from a technology standpoint, it's a pain point. Whereas if you compare that to the past, cybersecurity, although it was, a concern of our clients, it wasn't to the heightened awareness that they really have to figure out how to lock it down, given the fact that they're going to more IP standardization, which again provides those additional services and applications that can interoperate. But bad actors have the capability or a greater capability of impacting their operation. Probably the final thing that I would highlight too is how to embrace the cloud. Historically, most of the applications and services within our clients' environment, IT environment, was premise-based solutions. And now they have the option to take advantage of various services that maybe were only offered in a premise environment to have it hosted in the cloud. So, do they want to totally bring everything up into the cloud from, let's say a legacy premise-based application solution to a forward-looking, kind of the next generation of that application, and it's only offered in the cloud, and how's that impact to them? Or maybe it's some type of a hybrid approach where you have certain aspects of the solution set that would be cloud-based and others that would be more premise-based. So a lot of things are impacting our clients from a technology standpoint.
So before we move on to operations, I'd like to ask a couple of follow-up questions. One, you mentioned the term network mesh. Now, what does that mean exactly? Does it mean a whole bunch of networks and systems that are somehow sort of interconnected within an organization or within an ecosystem? How would you define the network mesh?
Well, at the local level, let's say, a city, most basic level within a city, right? They would have a network that is enabling them to communicate effectively within the city with various departments, as well as obviously let their citizens communicate into their network. But now it's actually really getting networks of networks. So you have a city that's most likely, clearly, obviously in a county, and the county is within the state. And they want to be able to have interoperability between that city, that county, and ultimately the state. Now, there'll be a number of information sharing initiatives that they've had for years that maybe they did via kind of old school sneakernet, where they would download files and hand it to another individual, or put it on a thumb drive and hand it to another individual, or maybe they put it up into some type of a document share file, and then they put it in that file and then someone downloads it. But I think ultimately when they have those common networks that are all IP based, they can intercommunicate between, again, within agencies or departments within a city to a county to a state. Really provides kind of that overall network mesh to bring everything together.
So now I wanted to ask you too again about these shiny object syndrome. When we think about that on one level, it's there's a lot of cool stuff out there, but it might not necessarily align with with your mission and with how you need to serve your stakeholders, right? And so I'm thinking that one of the best ways to avoid succumbing to that syndrome is to do regular assessments of the technology environment and make sure that what you're thinking about is aligning with your mission. Isn't that right?
Oh, without a doubt. We're huge believers at Mission Critical Partners and working with our clients to do, could be pilot systems or trial systems kind of in a closed environment to make sure that there's clear understanding of how this technology could help them, and to be able to have the measurement related elements on, how was the overall performance on, let's say, a particular workflow without it, and then how is the performance being increased or enhanced as a result of injecting this new technology, and making sure that you clearly understand what the baseline is, and then you're able to have some measurement techniques on, as a result of injecting this new technology, how does it increase or decrease overall, could be response time, whatever measurement criteria are applied to it as a result of that new technology. I think if people are approaching these projects where they're just enamored with this new technology without a clear understanding on, okay, what is going to be the impact, hopefully positively, obviously, and be able to measure the level of impact, then yes, it kind of falls back into the category. It's just a shiny new object. We're not quite sure exactly how it has benefited us, and sometimes maybe it's a negative effect, and you got to know to what level of the negative effect as well. There might be some degrees of freedom that, even though it might be a slight negative effect relative to maybe a response time, the overall effect is positive for other criteria. So what is acceptable, but it's really the measurement elements on that shiny new object.
That makes a lot of sense. In a moment, I'm going to asked Darrin to talk to us about the pain points regarding operations, that public sector organizations are experiencing. Before I do that, I do want to mention to the audience, Darrin spoke briefly about the cloud, and we do have a session entitled "What's Up with the Cloud" scheduled for Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We're going to be talking about use cases and how the cloud has evolved in the last year or two, and a lot of other interesting topics. So please keep that in mind. So Darrin, back to you. Let's talk about operations, and let's start with workforce shortages, which are profound within the public sector.
Well, it's profound everywhere. I think everyone who maybe has gone to a restaurant recently, or kind of the new normal is longer wait times. Well, in certain environments, that's, somewhat acceptable. I mean, you just have to adjust accordingly. But in mission critical communications, it's really not a positive thing in any way, shape, or form. The time to answer a call, the time to dispatch, the time to get on scene, whatever time measurement there is, time is so incredibly critical in the world that we operate. So having a workforce shortage impacts so many real departments, and ultimately can really have a negative effect to the citizens that need to be served. So that is something that operationally is hitting literally probably all of our clients, both on frontline personnel, IT management, first responders, and somehow they have to figure out how best to do a couple things. Number one, potentially to leverage technology that can fill those gaps to make sure that the resources that they have become more effective and efficient, even though they might have less resources. That could be one. Another one is to invest efforts into talent acquisition. What is their recruiting techniques? What measurements or what targeted recruiting campaigns can they have, what they can get a higher degree of success rate on people not only coming into the organization, but stay in the retention techniques within the organization. So it is something that we help our clients with quite often. Another thing when we look at operationally from a workforce standpoint, overall succession planning, because ultimately there's people that are retiring at faster rates because of the baby boomer effect, and some people refer to it as the silver tsunami. Whatever term you want to use, a lot of people are retiring. So how to prepare for that from a leadership standpoint and starting to put together solid succession plans to elevate people into higher degrees of management and supervisory roles, because that reality will happen, and don't get caught flat-footed when a key individual or resource retires. So it looks from the higher stakes standpoint, the public sector teams are bogged down with a lot of manual processes. I talked about this earlier just before on how can you automate certain processes that frees up time for the resources to do the most critical related items. There's a lot of factors that it's not any one way or one strategy. There's multiple things that we work with our clients that really is at the end of the day a combination of technology and operational efficiency when we work with our clients, and strategy on how to attract and retain the talent that they do have. So that really impacts them. And I think it's the biggest challenge right now, Glenn, is you have an influx of people that are leaving, while at the same time digital transformation is going at a faster rate. So the increased volume of data to improve decision making is happening, but it actually creates higher degree of complexity in our client's environment. How comfortable are they with that? Recognizing they're kind of thin staffed already. So that's a big challenge that they're going through right now. So that's where I think a lot of the clients can flex out to firms like us, as an example, to augment resources and help their operations on either a short-term basis or a medium or long-term basis to help them through those transitional related items.
Yeah, and I think it's not just the volume of the data, but it's also that there are many, many different new types of data flowing into these organizations that have to be dealt with.
Right.
All right, so let's move on to governance. What do you think the key pain points are in that area?
Well, probably, on a governance standpoint is data privacy issues, protecting what matters most. And, everything does matter. So I don't want to state that certain things don't matter, but there are certain things that are, matter at a higher level than other things. From a governance standpoint, greater collaboration regionally and with state and federal partners or other parties involved. I think, again, back to what we talked about earlier on the technology side, when you have that network mesh, it creates an environment for more collaboration. We'll talk about a couple projects here, I believe, later on in this presentation, where there's a common theme of collaboration and communication amongst various disparate entities and agencies. And that is very, very critical. And from a government standpoint, on what can be shared, who can see it, who should not see it, et cetera, really increases with the sharing of data. There's a lot of incredible amount of benefits of sharing the data and more collaboration amongst departments and agencies within the ecosystem. That's fantastic. But you definitely have to have more controls on who has gained access to it, who holds that data, who has rights to that data, et cetera. So governance is something that definitely is an area that we're spending an incredible amount of time with our clients as a result of more data, multimedia data coming into emergency communication centers, emergency call centers, ECCs, public safety answering points, just the centers as a whole, as well as it creates, again, the collaboration between the law enforcement side and the justice side, as well as overall public safety and other entities that could be the transportation department, could be the local utility, in times of need or, on an ongoing basis. And usually you have to determine, how do you have, from a governance standpoint, do you have open connections, or do you have the capability of creating connections on an ad hoc basis that might be more situational, during a hurricane, during a wildfire, various events, or during the Super Bowl, as an example. And how do you stand up and break down those connections, or how do you make those connections active on an ad hoc basis, or are they always active? So all those things have to be put into some level of governance model that everyone's aware of, how this is all going to work.
And thank you, Darrin. We're going to move on to the next topic question in a moment, but before I do that, I do want to remind the audience that they can ask Darrin questions using the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen, and you will be getting answers from him via email in the very near future. So having said that, let's jump back into the topic questions. And Darrin, what I'd like to do is have you talk about the 5 major national projects that we were awarded recently. And I'd like to have you talk about the vision and goals for each. And why don't we start with the regional interoperability workshops that on which we're working with NASNA, the National Association of State 911 Administrators.
Yeah, we're really excited about every project that we work on, first and foremost, Glenn, but especially these 5 projects. And I've been serving the industry, as you may be aware, Glenn, for over 3 decades. And when we look at these 5 projects all kind of happening, well, they all are happening at the same time. They have a common theme, and hopefully everyone who's listening understands what it is. But I'll tell you what it is out of the gate, right? It's all about interoperability and collaboration. They have different names. The projects have, kind of a set of the objectives, as you would expect, but at the end of the day, it really comes to interoperability and collaboration and communication as far as various aspects of it. So, yeah, NASNA, which is a National Association of State 911 Administrators. I think hopefully everyone could get more familiar with what NASNA is all about. It's a non-for-profit entity. They put out a bid in the fall of last year. We were very, very pleased that under a competitive process that we were selected to fulfill that. I think we were selected based upon our proven experience during the last 13 years and doing almost 2,000 projects, and our ability to have a full understanding all the way from point of entry on 911 to what we call facility and operations and the automated tools that go into that, be it computer-aided dispatch, records management, as well as our broadband capability and our knowledge on the justice side as well. So I think and of course, cybersecurity. So I think that definitely set us apart. And as you mentioned before, Glenn, we've already had one of the workshops, and the first one that took place was in April in Dallas. It was just about 60 representatives from a number of states were there. And each state is sending some key representatives. But the overall goal of these workshops, and again, Dallas took place in April, Salt Lake City is taking place this month, May, then we're going to be, St. Louis, I'm sorry, and then Salt Lake will take place in July, and then Washington, D.C., there'll actually be 2 sessions. So these interoperability workshops, is what it's called, is really, the goal is to build a stronger roadmap to achieve exactly that, interoperability and greater collaboration between key groups at the state level that will impact all parties at the local level. So clearly there's going to be a representative from NASNA that is the 911 representative for that particular state. There'll also be a state wireless interoperability coordinator, SWIC representative, alerts and warning representative, representative from the governor's office, and key federal agencies will also and are also participating, specifically CISA, in the National 911 Program Office, which is under the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So that's where the National 911 Program Office, which is part of the Department of Transportation at the federal level. So it's really an incredible workshop to bring these people together on where do you stand now relative to interoperability on key related topics, be cyber and sharing multimedia data, some of the things that we just talked earlier about, to see them all be brought together and put together common goals that are set out into the future that they can understand and really put together common themes or roadmaps that working together, they can achieve very, very great things on behalf of citizens within their state. And it's a great sharing information from state to state because it really creates that kind of the network. And usually, as you would expect, these workshops, we're organizing them where, kind of you have the central states coming together in St. Louis. We had a lot of the states when we were in April in Dallas. We had a number of the states, be it Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, kind of in that Southwest area. So we're kind of regionalizing this so they clearly understand kind of their same type representative that's the state over and all that. And it's just a great way to share information and again, at the end of the day, have defined action items that they're going to work on for the betterment of safety and security within the states that they represent.
So there are several other exciting projects that we're working on simultaneously, and one involves, you had mentioned a national 911 program, and there's a CAD interoperability project that we're working on. And what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we, you look at NASDA and the interoperability workshops, those 5 workshops we're working on. Now, in a parallel effort, we have a team working on 3 projects with NHTSA, and those were 3 independently awarded, bid on, and then awarded projects. Again, very, very pleased and humbled that we were able to win all 3 of them. One of them is like you said, Glenn, the CAD Interoperability program project that we're working on, and it's bringing together a large group of entities from ECCs across the country and small to large CAD vendors to complete a nationwide CAD assessment. And really the goal there is to outline the challenges and costs required to establish an interoperable 911 CAD data sharing capability nationwide. So it's a pretty significant lift on what the goals are, but the information that we're gathering already from the ECCs that are part of it, as well as the computer-aided dispatch vendors that are part of it as well, is very, very inspiring. So it's looking at the resources and the budgets and the partner agencies and what they need to do, and ideas on how best to leverage those resource budgets and various agencies that would create better CAD interoperability. We had a workshop that took place several months ago, and the first report has been presented to the 911 program office, and we're anticipating an industry update very, very shortly. Very excited about that project, one of three that's ongoing concurrently with NHTSA.
Let's talk a little bit about the GIS Assessment Project, which also is a NHTSA project. Now, obviously, GIS data is a linchpin of next generation 911 service, right? Because in that environment, callers are going to be located via geospatial location, which is driven by GIS data. So talk a little bit about that project, if you could.
Yeah, when you look at next generation 911, GIS is a huge factor to making sure that everything is incredibly successful. Again, back to the network mesh, you can kind of have a layer of what's the GIS codes to make sure that that location based upon where that service request is very, very accurate. So the goal of the nationwide GIS assessment project is to determine the current state of GIS used by all stakeholders within the national 911 community. And then we're putting together a plan to inform information on the benefits of and the challenges to a national GIS uniformity and the sharing of GIS data amongst 911 professionals, also to identify what's needed to achieve interoperable GIS data nationwide and recommend strategies for executing a plan to do so. So if you think about it, you got to really have some level of standardization to make sure that that GIS data is common. So if you get a service request and you want to transfer that to another location, or maybe where the initial call goes into is unavailable, could be again a hurricane or some type of wildfire, what have you. It has to be routed to another area, but they definitely have to still have common GIS data to get first responders to the point of concern. So again, on this, it's been an incredible, collaborative, informative project. I think everyone's learning a lot about it. The first report, similar to the CAD project that we talked about earlier, has been presented to the National 911 Program, and an industry update is coming out very shortly on this one as well.
Well, a common thread through all these projects, obviously, is data. And there's another pretty exciting project that we've embarked upon, and that's the 911 Data Path Project. What can you tell us about that?
Very excited about this one. It's almost kind of like a layer cake as far as all this information. What's the common theme, Glenn? Standardization, interoperability, understanding of what are the key components based upon service requests, a response, and recording of that incident. And when you look at the 911 Data Path Project, it is the first 911 data exchange model at the state, local, and regional level. And long-term, ultimately, can we get to a national 911 data system that enables routine sharing of 911 data? At the most basic level, various terms, as well as another level is obviously what was the performance potentially, at the local level. So the goal really is to create a reusable nationwide data exchange that would be used at the local, regional, and state entities. That is really the goal. And we're leading the project with our data integration solution team, combined with our experts working on and hundreds of 911 projects nationwide. We have a fair amount of knowledge on how to be able to do this, combined with the experts to actually put together this central repository that will enable analytics to be performed on everything from budget, staffing needs, average response time, time to answer calls, just a number of things. They'll actually provide from a repository. The vision is, kind of have one central repository that provides all that information at a state and local level. And I think the information will be incredible for the individuals that are impacted. They'll have a capability of learning from their peer agencies. Let's say one agency is determining that their time to answer is a lot quicker than one of their peer agencies, or time to dispatch, whatever measurement as an example. then they can better understand, well, how are you doing it at that rate? And what performance criteria, maybe what technology are you using? And it's all about getting better and how to serve the citizens in the best possible way. So the Data Path project is very, very exciting that NHTSA took this on, and we're incredibly excited to work with all the players that are part of not only the Data Path project, but the GIS assessment and the CAD assessment as part of the NHTSA projects.
We'd be remiss if we didn't also talk a little bit about the project that the IGES Institute is driving with working in concert with the Department of Homeland Security. And this project is trying to is looking at testing CAD to CAD interoperability in a lab environment. And I think one of the things that really intrigued me about this was that they're looking at how the non-proprietary standards can be leveraged in this manner. So what more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the IGES project is something, again, it was competitively, it was a competitive bid, and we bid on it and won it as well. Very excited about it, and it's testing CAD to CAD. Now, I will say ultimately when this came out, years ago, I ran one of the largest computer dispatch firms in the industry. And I stated, well, there's been CAD to CAD out there for quite some time. But when you look at this, it's really how do we make sure that it's incredibly standardized and goes through some rigorous interoperability testing in a lab environment. It's all based upon this project is all based upon new non-proprietary standards, and they're been created by IGES and DHS as well as NENA. Because NENA, there's been some standardization, a lot of work that's already been done. People probably heard of EDIO and items like that, but this is really kind of getting those standards, putting it into a lab environment, kind of standing that up and doing that test with and amongst various CAD related suppliers. So I think, in fact, I know a lot of people are learning a lot to further solidify and make sure that the standardizations are flushed out and then published for all parties to be aware of. So really lessons learned will provide, what we anticipated out of this project with IGES is valuable information on how the standards can be implemented in the future by all parties in the industry, so that critical data can be shared amongst the entire public safety and justice workflow. And it's interesting, we're just highlighting these 5 projects, but I think it's so important because, again, back to what I said earlier, the common theme is interoperability, sharing, governance. And with this data, because so much more data is coming into the public safety, public sector environment, if you can't share it, then ultimately silos are created and valuable data could get lost in the mix. So incredibly excited about all these projects.
Well, another very important topic in the public sector these days is cybersecurity. It's a significant point of emphasis for every organization in the ecosystem. What has MCP done to ramp up its cybersecurity offerings, and what makes them different than what other providers are offering?
Well, first and foremost, the difference that we offer our clients is true technology independence. Essentially, we're Switzerland. We don't make manufacture firewalls. We don't make manufacture virus protection software. We don't manufacture servers that are in the back room that are hosting computer-aided dispatch applications or record management solutions or mobile applications out on the first responder and the vehicles. So it really provides that level of independence, which is key. Now, we've been serving the community at a heightened level. Every year it gets more and more with cyber security assessments, training, pen testing, and monitoring for a number of years. And we've actually have done, I think the last count was a little over 500 public safety grade assessments across the United States. And I would argue that's probably more than any other player out there, definitely from a technology independence manner. And with each assessment, we learn more and more. So it is really, really critical as we move into next generation whatever, that these systems are locked down, because bad actors are going after critical infrastructure, which are communication networks, obviously mission critical solutions, clearly banking, financial, water, wastewater, et cetera. So, these are things that we're investing more in. And we knew that we wanted to bring it to a next level, and where we already were, how do we get better and provide more services to our client base, which is really focused on the public sector. In doing that, we looked at a number of firms out there, and some of them are sounded and looked very, very interesting. But they probably weren't a right mix for us for a variety of reasons. And then ultimately, we found this firm out of Washington, D.C. that's been involved with cybersecurity services for well over 20 years. The name of the firm is Secure Halo. It's a leading cybersecurity firm that performs work for the federal government and other mission critical entities. And it really is a kind of a perfect match for us. So we were able to close the transaction with them. The acquisition in March of this year just takes our capability in cybersecurity to a whole new level. We're talking about a group of individuals that have cleared and credentialed teams. They have top security clearances. They've been, the recipient of numerous cybersecurity awards. They're certified out of DHS. And what we have the capability now with this new asset base that comes into our lifecycle management services division is incredible. We've stood up what we're calling a Secure Halo Cybersecurity Solutions Center of Excellence, again based in the DC metro area, that is largely staffed. That has a large staff that is entirely focused on helping organizations achieve operational resiliency. So we clearly are the strongest independent assessment offering in the country. We have that capability of providing that. And what's really, really interesting in this plan, when we were looking at it, we thought we were doing, and we still think, we've done a very good job during the last few years relative to doing cybersecurity assessments and pen testing and the training criteria and the solution sets that we had on training as well as monitoring. But once we understood and got a better understanding what Secure Halo could do, it took us, again, as I mentioned before, to the whole nother level. And I'm going to focus on a couple things here. Number one, about 75% of the marketplace, if you just look at public safety, are smaller entities and agencies, from a position count, maybe, 1 to 4 positions. And those entities, if you think about it, they don't really have the budget and capability and the need, quite candidly, on having, let's say, a dedicated chief security officer. It would just be kind of overkill for them, right? It's a small entity. Everyone typically wears multiple hats. Usually the IT person is also the dispatcher, is also doing other things as well. But when we look at, Secure Halo, they have a program, a service called Virtual CISO, Virtual Chief Security Officer. And I think it's just so compelling because it actually enables us as MCP, working with our wholly owned subsidiary, Secure Halo, to work with our clients where we can do an assessment for, any size agency. But if we just kind of use this as an example, kind of a smaller agency, we can do that assessment, then help them close kind of the vulnerabilities that they have, and then work with them on a monthly basis or every quarter or every 6 months, or kind of worst case scenario, every year, on being kind of their lifeline or their helpline on any security related item, and guide them through where we kind of essentially they're flexing out for CISO related services that we would offer them. So they don't have to hire an individual or keep the expertise in house, which, kind of keeping these individuals on staff is challenging because there's such a vital resource to any entity. So that's something where we've kind of taken our capability and our services on cyber to a whole nother level. And it's something that a lot of our clients are so interested in finding more about, and we're communicating to a lot of them as well.
So
We also have,
I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
No, we also have the capability now with Secure Halo coming into our asset base. And, our firm is, compliance related services. They're so knowledgeable and have such expertise on what's the compliance related elements that you have to be aware of, we just become so much more knowledgeable in front of our clients relative to cyber and many other things. I guess I'll pause there. There's a lot of things I could go on because I'm so excited about what we have the capability of providing our client base. So maybe I'll take a breath there and see if you have any questions on what I've already said.
I don't, but I have one more question that I'd like to get to in the short amount of time that we have left with each other, and that concerns MCP's focus, which over the years has broadened. We started off, as a public safety focused firm in the beginning, and especially in the last few years, we have significantly broadened our focus into other areas. What are some of the recent steps besides the Secure Halo acquisition? What other things have we done recently to broaden our focus?
Oh, well, just listening to our clients. So I'm a big believer in, well, for instance, what? So a lot of our clients, if we talked back before, the challenges they're having with managing IT and IT resources, we've done a number of things in IT services. We call co-managed IT services, where we flex out and maybe somebody uses a resource or two from our organization. And we've been doing that for years. But we also are working with as an example, a county in Pennsylvania, where they're outsourcing their entire enterprise IT environment, and all the 560 county employees we're going to be supporting for the entire organization, from the public safety organizations to the county buildings, everything that's taking place within the entire organization, county buildings, the district courts, et cetera. We're providing help desk and on-site support and overall vendor management. So greatly expanding the impact that we have with this particular county. That's just one example. The other one is an acquisition that we did in March as well, which is RKB Technologies, that provides project management, business analysts, and technical resources to implement large-scale IT modernization projects. So, we have had the capability of project management and business analysts and technical resources, but now with RKB Technologies, we also have the capability to help our clients develop. Could be a specific custom application development that they need for their specific environment. And RKB Technologies has been doing this for years. So we're really thrilled to expand our overall services relative to professional, managed services with the advent of RKB Technologies.
All right. Well, thank you, Darrin. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I would like to thank Darrin Reilly, MCP's president and CEO, for sharing his insights with us today. He certainly covered an enormous amount of ground in the last 45 minutes or so. I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience for listening. We hope all of you enjoy the rest of your time with CAPS 2022. So long.